Okay. All right. We are live. Awesome. So thanks everybody for tuning in. My guest today just told me how to say his name, and he said it. He said it's Karan. Can you say it out
Yep.
loud? Because I'm trying my best.
Yeah, definitely. It's Karan. Yeah,
Karan.
yeah.
Okay, I'm
So
close.
it
I have a hard
definitely
time with that
gets.
role.
Oh yeah. It definitely gets different versions of it. Like it's Karan, it's Karan. So yeah, I'm
Yeah, the
okay with it.
American
Yeah,
version is probably Karen.
yeah. That's the most
My
common one
American
that I
mouth can
get
say that the
actually.
easiest.
Yeah,
I try. I try
but
to say it.
yep.
Anyways, thanks for coming on. To everybody watching, you had reached out to me because you had gotten laid off from your job in December and went through the job search process and now have a
Mhm.
job. You're a senior data analyst, and also you were an international student. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting perspective to see like your journey because I actually get a lot of people reaching out to me like, hey, do you know about like getting a job in X? I'm like, hey, listen, I
Mhm.
don't know anything about any market that's not American. I don't know how to get a visa to come to America. I don't know any of that stuff. So I can't give you advice on that stuff. So I'm just super interested to hear like your story. So tell me, I saw on your profile that you had started off in getting a degree in India and then you got a degree in the United States. So like just tell me about your path and how you landed in data analytics in the United States.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me here, Annie. I remember like watching some of the coffee chats. It has been very informational. So I'm like really excited and looking forward to the conversation today. So yeah, going back to so my undergrad was more in computer science and engineering back in India. And at that point, like we didn't have a lot of exposure to data analytics as such. It's definitely not in the way that we know it right now. So my undergrad was like back in 2011. So after that, I kind of started in the test automation space. So software engineering slash test automation kind of a role. And I had kind of like a close to 5 years of experience back in India working in the test automation space. And so throughout that process, I was I think I got introduced to analytics, as a different teams who were working on everything that we were providing them with. So I was always involved in discussions around, how do we quantify these metrics, things like that. So that kind of started that curiosity around, okay, what are they utilizing this data for? So I was on the other end of providing them with all of those information, but I was never on the side of like, analyzing that data. So yeah, I think that was the point where one thing led to another, and I was looking to. So there are two things that I was looking to do at that point was to, uh, you know, kind of make a shift into analytics, and at the same time, I had doing a master's in mind. Um, and my elder brother was kind of helping me out, so he did his MBA from Boston University, so he kind of helped me out in evaluating some of the colleges here, what are the different courses that I can take. So it was all a bit new to me, but that one thing led to another, and kind of I started the application process for the masters. So yeah.
Interesting. And so was it okay, I want to get my master's and I want to be a data analyst, or was it you knew you wanted your master's, wasn't sure exactly which direction you were going to take it yet?
Yeah, and that's a good question. As much as I would like to see that being a very, like a strong decision at that point, I was definitely thinking that either software engineering or data analytics, any one of these would work for me. And that was one of the reasons the information system courses that, you know, the degree that I applied for had both of these two things. And both of these were kind of new to me. I did do some of the software engineering pieces with my work, but this was a lot of new things that I would get introduced to. So that kind of drew me to this degree about, okay, I'll get a chance to maybe play around with it. Little did I know that I you'll have to go through so many assignments, and it was a 12-month program, so it like yeah it just went through, and we had to work through everything at the same time.
Mm.
But I'm glad I took that decision, because that kind of pivoted me into a direction where I had to choose um, whether I need to go into analytics or not. So I always tell people that, when they are doing a master's degree or any degree for that matter, if you know something that hasn't worked for you, that's also a positive. So I knew that software engineering, like going deep into it, would be very hard for me. So I liked analytics much more and kind of took that path onto my work also. Yeah.
That makes sense. So
Yeah.
then when you were, making your decisions, like because you were an international student, did you feel like you had to kind of make some decisions about which direction you were going to go based on your ability to get a visa? Because I know that getting
Mhm.
visas can be really difficult, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So there's something called as a STEM degree, the science, technology, engineering, and medicine. From what I'm aware of, I might be
Hmm.
a bit off there, but so a STEM degree, and this was part of all the research and everything that goes into the application. The STEM degrees are something that provides us with 3 years of OPT. It's an optional practical training. Again, I might be off. This has been a while, but when I graduated, so I was kind of aware of, okay, there is a process that takes some time, and then we can apply for a work visa. So non-STEM degrees, we only get like one uh, chance to go through the lottery. It's actually called an H-1B lottery, which is
Yeah.
your next step towards a work visa. So the STEM
Hmm.
degrees provide at least three chances. So that was one thing that I had in mind.
Hmm.
But I would say that was in fact, yeah. I mean, overall, it was definitely around what I would want to do for my next career. Yeah.
Okay. And so then you went through the lottery, and were you not sure if you were going to be able to stay or not at that point? Like, did the lottery mean if you didn't win the lottery, you couldn't stay?
Yeah, yeah. So as I mentioned, like it gives you three chances to go through that lottery. A lot of people who don't get a have to got picked for me, and I think who are in that position have to kind of evaluate so many other options, because it is definitely a limited slot in that sense. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So tell me about your first data job. You finished college. Did you get a job as a data analyst right away?
I didn't get the last part.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask people in the comments if it seems like it's my connection or if it seems like it's your connection, because last time, yeah, that could help us troubleshoot a little bit. But I had said, did you get a job in data as a data analyst right away, or did you have to bridge your way into the industry?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. One of the things that was hard for me to do was convince people that, not having that analyst background, I can still add to their team. So that was one of the things that definitely, took a lot of time for me to interview, go through all the application process. I mean, I was kind of even new to the whole idea of having, a one-page and getting getting it optimized to a point where it gets picked and go through the interview process. So I think that was a lot of learning in that process, and a challenge with pivoting into something new. Yeah.
Okay, hang on one second. I think that the problem might be that my boyfriend is using the Wi-Fi. So just one second. I'm gonna ask him to go.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know.
Yep,
I
no
have not.
problem.
He's never been home when I've done a coffee chat before, so I imagine it maybe it's just the two of us competing for the Wi-Fi. Anyways,
Yeah,
can
I
you?
did a check on my end also. So yeah, sorry
And
about
your
that.
end is good.
Maybe it might be. Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, then it's my fault. Okay, so anyways, can you just tell me again your first data job? What was it?
Oh yeah, yeah. So just out of grad school, it was, as I mentioned, like the pivot into analytics was something that I had to go through a lot of like interviews, and at the same time, I was kind of going through all of these, steps for optimizing my resumes. So I kind of like started, reviewing those resumes with my colleagues. I had some friends here who have been here in the US for a longer time, so I kind of reached out to them, get their help on the reviews and feedback from the resume. So I think that whole process of going through each of these different moving pieces, ending up into a data job was, I think, at least 4 to 5 months of journey uh,
Hmm.
between that. Yeah.
So you've now gone through a couple of different job searches. So what would you say you learned about optimizing your resume from that first job search up until now getting senior positions? What have you learned about that resume and making it a good resume?
Sure, sure. And that's a great point. So, even from a lot of international students, especially who are uh, shifting cultures, so I would say we have to be very observant of everything that's happening around us, rather than focusing on, sticking to the format that we might be used to. So one thing that I noticed was, it has to be, very to the point, because the recruiters also have like very very few chances to go through your resume. Even if they go through
Hmm.
that, it's a very short period of time. So I started um, reducing all the clutter in the resume, and I still see
Yeah.
a lot of that happening, because I have done resume reviews where grad students are very excited about, okay, there are pandas, Python packages that I've used, and it's good. But if that is not in a context of how that has affected the business, it it's kind of like just goes unnoticed. So even if there is a
Mm.
lot of effort that has gone into, so that's my first pointer always, is that reduce that clutter, and make sure you are focusing and quantifying whatever you have kind of contributed into the project. So it should be business focused and not your course focused or your specific personality focused. It has to come at a point where the recruiters are finding it easy to go through your resume. Yeah.
So, do you think that that is a cultural difference in the sense that America is definitely very built on capitalism and the states are definitely very focused on the bottom line for their company? So, do you think, did you
Hmm.
experience, at least from the United States to India, that maybe in India they'd
Hmm.
be more accepting of other things, where in the states it's more of capitalism?
So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that's the reason the
Yeah.
resumes are one pagers. I'm not sure about that, but I would definitely say that, back in India, even while just after my undergrad, I remember having a two-page resume that had everything that I would, include hobbies, everything that I have done from co-curricular activities in detail. So, and again, I'm not trying to bucket everything. I might get some comments around, not everybody does that, but I'm not trying
Mhm.
to bucket that. But I have definitely seen back then, definitely was that, having more than one page of resume was very normal. So that was a shift for me. And that's where the feedback, I think the faster you get that feedback, it's easier for you to make that shift early on. Yeah.
Mhm. So, your jobs, when you get these jobs, like, do they have to sponsor a visa for you, or do you get a visa and then you can just get any job?
Yeah. So there are positions which are marked by the organizations to be open to sponsorship or not. So right off the bat, the recruiters, and that's the one thing that I do always, is in my first interaction, even on LinkedIn or emails, I tell them that I would need a sponsorship and whether this
Okay.
position allows for that sponsorship or not. So yeah, yeah.
So what are the mechanics of the sponsorship? Like, do they have to pay money
Mhm.
for the sponsorship?
Yeah, so there's definitely additional cost associated with this. So the entire idea is that, as many of these positions are tagged as open to sponsorship. Again, this is from my perspective.
Hmm.
From what I know, the recruiters and HR would be, I think, having much more transparency there. But
Yeah.
this is definitely one of the factors that there are a lot of job opportunities which are very much aligned with what you want to do, but are not open to sponsorship. So these have additional costs to it. So as I mentioned in my previous conversation, like H-1B work visa is the next step after the student visa, and
Hmm.
that also incurs an expense. And as and when we move forward in that process, there is a lot of expense that the organization has to bear on behalf of the employee. Yep.
So are there certain types of organizations that you have learned to kind of target because they're more likely to have? I imagine small startups probably don't have the funding and roles tagged for those kinds of sponsorship opportunities, right?
So I have seen definitely a lot of opportunities within startups also. So it's
Hmm.
hard to bucket them. Yeah, it's
Okay.
definitely hard for us to kind of bucket them into one of the categories, or even by the organizational size. I've seen startups doing that. I've seen a lot of big organizations, of course, Amazon and Facebook, all of them have these opportunities available. So yeah, again, it's hard to kind of say that, okay, these organizations or these verticals or
Hmm.
like healthcare or something like that would have lesser options for this. So it's only through that discussion with the recruiter and the team that we come to know that, okay, this is something that's not open to or either is open to a work visa.
That's I'm that's interesting. I definitely
Yeah,
would not
yeah.
have guessed that. So at your first role, what were the things that were expected of you? Somebody asked about modeling. I can't imagine
Mhm,
you were
mhm.
doing like machine learning modeling at your first role.
Sure.
So what was expected of you back then?
Sure. So my first opportunity was as a data reporting analyst. So I have never till now worked in a lot of machine learning space. My profile has been mostly in the BI space mostly. So I have utilized. So going back to my first position, I have utilized tools like Tableau, Alteryx, and SQL, of course. But the percentage of all of this depends very, very much on the team and how and where they are in that maturity process of going from level 1 to level 5 maturity. So in my first position, I was expected to utilize a lot of Tableau and Alteryx to basically work with the operational teams, and like operational teams like HR, finance, and information security, and helping them come to a place where all of their manual efforts are now automated. So again, it
Hmm.
depends, right? So a lot of organizations who are like at the cusp of doing all of this in the background would now expect you to do some more analytical work, some more of those strategy thinking. But it is very, very, dependent on where they are. Yeah.
Okay. Something else that I'm curious about, but I'm not exactly sure the right way to ask it. Have you experienced people, do you think people treat you any differently, like knowing that you're on the sponsorship or like hearing your accent or anything? I am looking back
Hmm.
and realizing that my coffee chat guests have been predominantly white American citizens. So I'm curious, you as a data analyst,
Yeah.
like have you
Yeah.
experienced that at all?
Well, luckily, no. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have been like, all of these conversations have been, yeah, like very upfront and honest about, what they can and they cannot do right now. So as I said, like I think it's also about us being upfront about these things. So if you are having a couple of round of conversations and then telling the recruiters about, I would need a work visa, work visa, that might not end well in kind of burning that bridge, because you are then, I mean, you have taken up a lot of time where you could have, both ways, you could have spent at that time evaluating other positions. So yeah, I mean, in my personal opinion, I have never seen, kind of like a difference in that sense about how they would go about the discussion. Yeah.
That's good. How about in your
Yeah.
actual analyst roles, like your
Mhm.
coworkers? Are your coworkers usually from the States? Because you're working at United States companies?
Yeah, yeah, it is definitely, and I've seen, a good mix of, all backgrounds now. So I mean, yeah, it's a lot of times, I think, again, I have been lucky enough to have, all of these support systems. They have resource groups, and I've been, as much as possible active in these resource groups. So I think that has been one of the things that I've always supported, and have a voice there. So yeah, yeah.
I think that what you said about the resources is important too,
Hmm.
because with the state of the internet right now, there's just so much free resources out there and support.
Yeah,
But you have to be willing to reach out to them. And I get so many messages from people being like, "Hey, Annie, can you help me with this?" And it's
yeah,
like, okay, but did you read any of my posts or even my bio before you sent that message? Like, you have to support and resources aren't usually going to come to you, but if you're
yeah.
willing to come to them. So, what have been are there any like I know that these can be very location dependent or, job specific, but are there any good resources or supports that you found that like kind of anybody could benefit from?
Yeah, and so also to clarify, like the resource groups that I was mentioning was like employee resource groups. So organizations also have like very specific resource groups in terms of, like, I have a Asian people's resource group where all the Asians in the organization anecdote that they would want to share, or something, again, like as you said, right, like something they might have experienced in the past that they have kind of learned from, or they can share that experience of those. So that also helps you go through all of these experiences, and takes a toll on your mental health, right? So being an international student, one of the things that I start off all my discussions with, especially my alumni meetings that I have sometimes, once a year probably, and then I tell them that the mental health aspect of all of this is often not talked about. And that's the reason I have always reached out, as you said, right? Like, we have to reach out more, because we are probably suffering more in our mind than we are actually, suffering in reality. So that's the reason that I have made it a habit, even sometimes when I don't want to. I've made a habit to at least register for all these meetings once a month, where everybody joins in. So there are, uh, very specific resource groups. I think all the companies have those now, and we should definitely check those out. Yeah.
Hmm. So, on the topic of mental health, let's unpack a little bit your most recent layoff and then the job search that followed. So, when you got laid off, I imagine it was a surprise, right?
Yep, yep. So your Slack went off, and then it's funny because the first reaction is probably there is something going on the admin side, or something in the IT, right? So you think that, okay, it might just be an access issue, but yeah, that was a lot to kind of digest through that process. I think and that's where this aspect of being an international student and being on a work visa eventually comes in, is that you have to kind of go through both of these processes in parallel. So usually, if you are not worried about your work visa, you might end up taking, let's say, like a couple of weeks off and start your job search after that. For somebody who is on a work visa, you only get 60 days, 60 calendar days to figure out your
Hmm.
next gig in an economy like
Wow.
this. And one thing that worked for me was that my organization provided me with a buffer time with full pay and extending my timeline there. Again, this is something that I find I was very lucky at that point. And I again made a post about that, thanking the organization and everybody who helped me out through that process. But it was definitely a very close call. 60 days is a very short time for us to go through, everything that we have discussed so far, right? Like the recruiters getting a reply from recruiters,
Mm-hmm.
checking whether this is open for a work visa, going through the round of all the interviews, and the application to the USCIS has to be put in before the 60 days. Only then you
Wow.
can stay in the country.
Wow.
Otherwise, yeah, I definitely had a plan B, like towards the later half of my job search. I started planning for my, like a plan B. So started listing out everything on my end, everything that I have to take care of before leaving the country. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. So
yeah.
if it didn't happen in 60 days, does that mean you could leave the country? Let's say you think you're in the interviews, but you haven't gotten an
Mhm.
offer and you think it's going to come at like day 70. Does that mean you leave the
Right.
country and then you could come back?
So, and that's one of the things that I might not be like completely aware of, but from what I knew and everything that I could find at that point, we can do that. Um, but yeah, it has to be done from, like going back to your country and then probably continuing to apply for positions and continuing that conversation. But
Wow.
yeah, I'm not very sure about that process, how it goes. I was kind of getting into that mind space of like, trying to delve more into it, but luckily this worked out. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah,
Wow. That sounds just so stressful.
I know.
So
Yeah.
so when you're interviewing, do you then say like, "Hey, can we just fast track this as much as possible?" Like, do you just tell them
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, definitely. I had to like, put away all my manners in that sense, right? As much as I would like to, follow up just once a week, I couldn't do that. I usually waited for maybe 2 to 3 days. And I always prefaced it with, the reason I'm doing this is that, because I'm in this situation. So yeah, different situations call for these different actions, I think. So I definitely made it very clear about, I would want to get this done as early as possible. Yeah.
Hmm. So tell us about your job now when you were interviewing for
Mhm.
that. Well, I guess you don't tell me about one specific position, but these interviews, what were they
Mhm.
like? They're senior data analyst positions, so probably not the easiest interviews. What were the interviews like?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So most of these interviews had a large part of the discussion around my just like the immediate uh, role that I was laid off from. So most of the discussions were around, like what was your overall role? Uh, what do you think was one of the reasons that, you uh, were able to contribute to the overall team goals? So that's a, I mean, laid off or not, I think that's a common conversation I've had with all the hiring managers, is that at this position I would not want you to just add something to the team, but be a, like a multiplicative effect on other people also. So I make sure I'm, again, very similar to the resume, right? I make sure that I'm having those discussions from like a very zoomed out view of what that team was trying to achieve in the overall vertical, or also connected to the organization's goal eventually, but on a very on a shorter goal. It would have maybe a 3 year or a 5 year goal, so I would start discussing that. So that way it tells them that, okay, you are not just focused on your work, but also kind of opening up to what everything else is looking for. Yeah.
Hmm. That's interesting that you say that. When I was going through my interviews for my first role, I would sometimes get the question, where do you see yourself 3 years, 5 years from now? And I honestly, I was like, I just got my graduate degree in occupational therapy, which is not data analytics.
Hmm.
and I decided to switch careers like 3 months ago at that point in time. So I,
Hmm.
realistically, I don't have an answer for you of where I see myself in 3 years because it's changing quickly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, do you think that before going for my next job search, I should probably at least have an answer to that 3 year, 5 year question?
I would definitely suggest yes. I mean, as much as I would want to, as you suggested, right? Like nobody knows maybe 3 years from now. Definitely that. I mean, I didn't know that I would end up being in the digital marketing space, which I am right now.
Hmm.
This was something that resulted in my interactions with my hiring manager way back in 2020. So this is so just for the context, like I came back to the employer before my last one. So I kind of like started reaching out to them, and I saw this post on LinkedIn and followed up on it. So LinkedIn has plays definitely played a very important part in all of this. But yeah, coming back to it, like all those discussions kind of led to be me being in the digital marketing space, which is new to me. But I would say like having that 3 to 5 years of you know goal setting in that sense also helps them align with, okay, is that something that we would need from the person coming into this role.
Hmm.
That might not work out as they or as all of us expected to, but
Hmm.
I think they are trying to align it with their goals. And that's one of the things, again, during the interviews, if we are mostly talking about our experience or our tools, it gives them less time to tell them about their problems, which is probably
Hmm.
what we will be getting paid for solving those problems. So I think, yeah, that's the reason it's probably a good idea to have that, yeah, on your end. Yeah.
So I'm curious about your planned direction. Like, is and it doesn't necessarily need to be just your work. Like, I know that you have a
Mhm.
family. So for
Mhm.
you, is it that you have a specific career direction you'd really like to go, or are you just happy to have a data analyst job that pays the bills for your family so you can have a life? Like, what is the future for you? Not necessarily just like your job wise, but like, what is it that you want?
Yeah, definitely. So over the last couple of years, one thing. So I'll just cover the professional part first, and then kind of delve into the personal part of it. So with the professional part, I think definitely last couple of years, I started realizing that I wanted to help out more and more people, starting from my team and fanning out. So that was one of the things that I again like started discussing with my managers about. I would probably want to give it a shot and have move towards a people management position. um, and that was kind of the discussion I was having with my my previous team also, uh, before everything that that happened. But that's professionally on a very like a macro level. That is where I see my you know professional career going. Um, and of course there are different hiccups in the process, and that might not be like, let's say, like the next couple of years or so. But I always keep that in mind whenever I'm having these discussions with my managers and setting up my goals to make sure that we are aligned on that. So many times we don't discuss these with our managers, and maybe they are not thinking about it. They have so many things on their plate, but it's important to have that conversation so we get those opportunities also. In on the personal space, definitely I think analytics overall, I'm happy to be in this space. I like the aspect of it where I can utilize data in general and have insights out of it. So yeah, I mean, personally, I enjoy this work. So as much as throughout my experiences, this is probably the one time that I find thinking about these things even after work, and not in a way where I'm taking away time from my family. But you get some of these moments sometimes of, okay, maybe we could do this, and you just write it down somewhere. So I think
Hmm.
I take that as a positive, because I'm really looking at, okay, how is this going to play out maybe next week, something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I spent all day yesterday just having my computer run extracts in Tableau because I have this problem I'm trying to solve where like
Hmm.
essentially like if the client's like if a client is like a client or whatever and they buy something on this day and this day and this day, but you also want to show in the data sets all the days that they didn't buy something. I'm trying to get that to show.
Okay. Okay.
And that's essentially like a cross join, but then like I can't do a cross join because that's going to be like 400 million rows of data or something.
Yeah.
So I just like I have a little demo example for myself with just like 15 rows of data that it worked. And then I did the same thing on the other. So I literally like on Friday I thought I was going to get some laundry done, go shopping. I sat down at 8:30 a.m. At 7 p.m., my boyfriend comes home and I'm still working on this. And then all day yesterday, I'd go and I'd, do some custom SQL and then it wouldn't work. And then, but it would take 40 minutes to load. So, and
Hmm. Yeah.
I enjoyed, like I see what you mean. Like I enjoy thinking about it. And I also, like on the same token, like I used to have jobs that when I would come home, I would like need to watch just TV or whatever
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah.
I just was just so burnt out.
Yep. Yep.
But now it doesn't happen so much. Like I kind of am happy to like be on LinkedIn posting about how people can get into data analytics or doing other
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like on my computer using my brain. But then this week I had some heavy lifting going on, so I was watching Modern Family, and my boyfriend was like, "Oh, you had a tough day at work, huh? Modern Family."
I love that show, by the way. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, you were right about that. Like even within that position, right? Like you will have days of ups and downs, and that kind of and you are very right now that you have mentioned it. I've seen that happening on my end also. Is like you are just fired up for something, and some days you are like, okay, okay, let's see what happens this week, kind of a thing. So yeah, yeah,
I saw this question in the chat. I thought it's a good one for you. It says,
yeah, sure.
currently in my junior year, should I fix my domain-based interest or should I be flexible?
Um, okay, so I think that's a good question based on, especially like, Pratmesh mentions that he's in junior year. Is there is if you really see a interest coming in and you are happy to, dive deeper into it, I would definitely recommend it. Being flexible kind of and again, like as much as we would want life to turn out as we plan it to be, being flexible there kind of helps you out in, let's say, especially in the current economy, if you are not able to find something relatable to your domain, what you can do is go a level up in your thoughts and think about, okay, this is how I can help somebody, like a team which is not with your domain, right? So it's about problem solving then, and not about the domain specific knowledge that you might have. So I think that's what I did. So when I was I'll give you an example of, whatever I had my discussions with my team. They were kind of working with, several tools with digital marketing, and there I was very upfront about, what are the things that I'm not aware of, right? You have to be very upfront and honest about that. And I always tell people, don't guess. Like always tell them, okay, this is where I am in this learning curve. And I always told them, okay, this is how I would have thought about something that they explained me during the interview process. So they understood that, okay, we would need to give him some time to get acquainted to all of these tools, but he understands where we are getting stuck, right? So that's the problem solving perspective of why would they want somebody to be in that position. Yeah, I hope that answers that question. I have this habit of probably extending my answers. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. I think that every senior data analyst I've talked to come back to the problem solving component. And I
Yeah.
think that when you're looking for your first job in data, you're just learning the data tools. It's very easy to get caught up on, what the heck is a window function, and do I have to use it in my interview, and which tools, do I need to know in order to get this job? Because that's the things that are unfamiliar to you. But then when it comes, I think you said something the way you said it, like I understood where they were getting stuck. And I think
Right.
that
Yeah.
that's a really big deal. Do you
Yeah.
think that with being a senior data analyst now, it definitely levels up your need to understand where things are getting stuck and work through that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And there's it just reminded me of a great book. It's called The Making of a Manager, I think. I
Mm.
forget the author's name, but that that kind of very clearly tells you the journey that you will be through. Initially you will be one of the foot soldiers, right? So you have to get the work done, but as you move towards a senior role, you have as much responsibility towards your manager about asking them what you can help out with, everything that they are doing. So that adds up to a lot of perspective to, I will take a couple of things off your plate. I've done this in the last couple of weeks also, is that anything that you don't have in your top 5 priority list, give it to me. If I can run this through, well and good. I will keep you in the emails, and whenever I think that you might have to jump in, I'll just tell you something like that. So as much as you would want somebody else to help you out, right, in any position, even in a junior position, you would want people to help you mentor or help with some of the code language or the data dictionary, things like that. Become that person and ask for more things that you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very insightful because it makes you more valuable and it levels you
Yeah.
up. I also think that being exposed to the priorities of the people above you is important because I was listening to a podcast the other day that people who are at kind of bigger organizations, especially who are
Hmm.
software engineers, data analysts, they just feel like they just are given a task and then they do it and they never see the why, they never see the impact on the users, the impact on the business. So
Yeah. Yeah.
understanding kind of the key performance indicators that your manager and their boss are looking at and how what you're doing is contributing to that means that when you go to ask for a raise or a promotion, you can say, hey, all of these key things that you worked on last year, I did these things to contribute. Otherwise, it's like, hey, I've been here for a year. Can I have a promotion? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, what
Yep.
have you done to
Exactly.
level up our business? Well, I don't know. I
Yep.
did all the things you asked me to do.
I did that in my first year actually. Like that's a great point. 2018 I graduated, and up until I think 2019, end of 2019, that's exactly what I was doing. I was so afraid of being in this new position, a new culture. Imposter syndrome is like I at that point is was like way off the roof. So I was like, they definitely made a mistake. I'm new to this and things like that. So I was doing everything that I could, not talking to anybody around me, like for at least a couple of months. When I'm doing a project, I would just like figure out everything on my own. I'm not asking for help. And then I think the first there was a Tableau dashboard that we all of the team was working on, and they kind of like, because that was not a very high priority at that point, I kind of took that up. But the feedback that I got then got me to a position where one of the data engineers on the team told me that you wouldn't have to play around with all these things that you have done in Tableau. You would have just mentioned this to me, and I would have provided that through a workflow and a separate a separate data structure in that sense. And that, like, yeah, it kind of changed all my perspective after that. You feel this, and this was in person meetings back then, right? So you feel this kind of embarrassment that, okay, this is happening, and your first shiny dashboard didn't get the respect that you would have expected it to be. So yeah, and
Yeah.
that you learn this the hard way. So I always tell people, ask for help. And I wouldn't believe I was doing this in my new position for at least the first day. I was like, Karan, what are you doing? You just have to ask them. And of course, they
Hmm.
had all the regular expressions and everything on there. And I was just
Yeah.
opening up my tab to, like understanding Tableau regular expressions. They have everything on
Hmm.
there, and saved me at
Yeah.
least a couple of hours. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. I just thought you'd appreciate seeing this. Somebody is really liking your stuff, what you're saying. It's resonating with somebody. So just wanted to
Oh,
show that to
perfect,
you.
perfect. Thank you.
Um, I was curious about in your in your observation. So you said you did your master's degree in 12 months, right?
Right. Yep.
So when you got into your job and you're now an American company working with people from, the United States. I'm curious about the cultural differences that you have felt, like in the
Mhm.
professional workplace, from what you were used to versus what's kind of the norm here now.
Right, yeah. Uh, Great question. So it took me a while, again, like very early on when I started my position, it took me a while to be like, I always wanted to be like more observant of everything on my end. So I would have definitely come across as a weird kid in the first few months. But what I was
Mm,
trying to do was observing a lot. Like, okay, this is how everything would happen around the lunchtime, right? Before
mm,
the lunchtime or after the lunchtime, there is some small
mm-hmm,
talk, everything. So small talk that for me again, like I don't want to bucket everything, but small talk was pretty new to me.
mm,
You just bump into somebody in the elevators and you start this conversation, right? Very new to me. So
mm,
all the while I was kind of observing and doing things that, okay, this can be done this way. So I have always tried to put that perspective to, even within teams, right? Like it would not be fair to even bucket everything that everybody in the US does, right? Every
mm-hmm,
team is different. Every organization, I think, has a different culture. uh, I mean, with my last work, everything was very fast moving. We had upfront conversations about anything. Other organizations have seen, like, maybe we'll take some time, have have some small talk first and then get to this point. So it depends. Yeah, I mean, I take that time to understand, okay, this is what the short term goal is, and kind of move around with it. So you have to go with the flow. Yeah.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another area in which I think you have to kind of probably study, it seems to me like if you go into a management role, or like a
Hmm.
very senior individual contributor role, you go from having your manager be somebody who's technical and you can just show them this cool thing that you did and they're like, you did a great job, to
Hmm.
all of a sudden you're now the in between of the people who are not in the technical tools every day. And you have to show them why what you and your team are doing are valuable. That's not
Oh
just
yeah.
because it was a very cool technical skill thing. Like, have you started to think
Yep, yep.
about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'll tell this, that it's actually a pretty new thing for me also. Like I've been very technical with all my experience, but I especially with my last role, I think I started to see that how much visibility has to be there for anything to take place in terms of a project or anything else that ties to the overall goal and the cost also. So cost becomes such a huge thing where we have limited resources, limited time. Of course, all of us are aware of it, but in your day to day, you might not think about it that much. So as you said, like there has to be uh, in effect like a parallel conversation about, is this headed the right way, and are we having a great ROI on the investment that we are doing, both from a time and resource perspective. So it's very important, and as early as in your career, if you start thinking about it, that would make your manager's life easier, I think. Is you are not just doing a plus one just because you are aware of a Python language, like a package or a particular language or a tool. You have to think about whether the entire team will benefit from doing something like that.
Mhm. I saw
Yeah.
this course and this comment. So this person has a BA, bachelor's in public admin, and wants to get a master's in data analytics. So what you ended up getting accepted to a master's in the United States and everything. So do you have tips on getting accepted for these kind of things?
Sure. So okay, yeah, so there are two perspectives of it. One is from a master's perspective. I also want to mention that like the degree that I took, there wasn't a specific data analytics degree that the college offered, and I was not accepted into that.
Hmm,
But what I ended up doing was taking the general course, and I took all of those courses that we can take as electives, very
hmm,
similar to what the data analytics course has, like a mandatory subject, right?
hmm,
So it kind of became that. But so the point I'm trying to make is that you don't have to, I mean, even if you don't get accepted to it, that's fine. you can still start building a portfolio. I see you have mentioned, like, you are doing courses from Coursera and LinkedIn, and I've seen so much discussion, especially on LinkedIn, about building a good portfolio. I remember, Annie, I think you mentioned a couple of people who have like a great portfolio on their end. So
Hmm.
that would be, I think, the next step that I would suggest for you to kind of give all your time to.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, the portfolio is big. I mean, I'm not planning on getting a master's in data analytics or anything, but just in terms of getting jobs, like if I think that kind of number one way, like if you want to show
yeah,
people,
yeah,
yeah, I actually can do this, then just, you know, and it's so funny because I have been creating content for over a year now, and I still, every time I mention a portfolio, people go, "What's a portfolio? And where can I
yeah,
get data?" And it's like, I
yeah,
mean, I'm happy to answer it, but I've answered this question like 1,000 different times. Like, there's
yeah,
so much free data on the internet. A portfolio is just go use Excel, go use SQL. You can do it all for free. And it's
yeah,
funny
yeah.
because
There's so many.
there's always this common denominator of people who are brand new and going, "What is that?"
Yeah, 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 and that's a good thing. Like, I think it's a good thing that they are asking the right questions, and then and especially LinkedIn is such a great community to have those. You will bump into these different things, and then kind of start off sorting down into, okay, these are the two things that I think would work for me. And just to quickly add on that, like portfolios, if you think about it, the easiest way for recruiters to remember you is by having a handy uh, link to something, right? So if you have like 10 people reaching out to you, you will have verbal conversations with them, but only 3 people follow up with an email with links to your portfolio, right? Now
Mm,
they have that on their end when they are having these discussions with hiring managers, that okay, I came across this nice Tableau public profile, and I have had these conversations in my I have interviewed a lot of people, and we saw a couple of very nice Tableau public profiles, and that definitely started a discussion within the team. So,
mm,
and eventually ended up being an offer. So it's that thing that people would, these are people, right? You have to make it easier for them. So yeah,
mm-hmm,
portfolio is the best way from what I'm looking. I don't have a portfolio either. I started utilizing GitHub. I do have some posts on Medium, but that was like long back, I think. I'm embarrassed to have those suggestions, but I don't have a portfolio. I see that's the thing that is most useful right now. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely have some stuff that I want to put in my portfolio just for the future, if anything happens, to show what I've been learning at this current role, because I've seen
Yeah.
the power. So did you say that you have interviewed people for data analyst roles?
Yes. Yeah.
So I
So
have
in
been
both
waiting for
my
that.
position. Mhm.
I've been waiting to have
Okay.
somebody on who's interviewed data analysts because nobody has yet. I'm so curious when you're interviewing for data analyst
Okay.
positions,
Okay.
what is your team looking for? What are you looking for? Because I imagine
Mhm.
it's not just the best SQL user on the planet, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And again, a great question. So it's the overall perspective of somebody who is interacting with us. As I mentioned earlier, like, are they listening to us, or are they bringing everything that they have with them? If they are just
Mm,
bringing everything from, again, like machine learning, everything else, like, our team is not at a place where they would utilize machine learning. And at that point, I mean, it becomes a right. You are thinking about something else, and they are thinking about something else. So you have to form a connect with the team about things that you can help solve, and that might be just 3 of the 5 things that you can do. But it's better to focus on those 3 things. And
mm,
specific to the tools, it depends a lot on the team and where they are in that process. If they have somebody who has just left the team and there was a high priority project, they might be just focusing on those tools for now. Again, that's not to say that the first person who has these experience gets in, right? There might be, again, like, let's say usually it takes a couple of months, but we have to do it in 2 weeks. Within those 2 weeks, we might get different submissions and things like that. uh, the one recurring theme that I have seen, my conversations with my manager, was that people who are ready to listen to us and also helping out other people in the team. So that, I think that's a recurring theme. Yeah, that would become your likability factor
Mm.
with the team. Yeah.
Yeah, I sat in on one interview one time, and the founder at my company was saying that for senior roles, I'm a Tableau consultant, and so we were
Hmm.
hiring for a senior Tableau consultant. And
Okay.
something that he looks for is for people to make it a dialogue. So we all
Mm.
do, before we get hired, a panel interview where we come and present a piece of work that we've done.
Hmm.
Um, and for entry level people, you're more likely to see them just kind of run their whole presentation, which I did, absolutely guilty of that. Run their whole
Yep.
presentation, and then be like, any questions? Whereas for people who are senior and used to consulting, especially because it's such a dialogue with your clients,
Hmm.
he's expecting to see, dialogue, not just any questions, but like, present this thing and then say, and is this an expected result? Or do we
Right.
need to dig
Right.
into this more and make it a dialogue? Which is like
Hmm.
you said, like you're actually listening rather than just word vomiting,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
It's such a easy thing to understand, and yet such a difficult thing to imbibe in your day-to-day conversation. So I still do that sometimes, right? So somebody from my team will always raise a hand or something like that on Teams. So I remember, like, okay, I'm doing that thing again, right? So yeah, you're right. Like, people then become disconnected around, like, why we are doing this, right? So you have to have a sense of, like, I've seen one common thing that we always liked about candidates was like their response to a feedback. So if I ask them, so we had this Excel, where we would send that out, and then ask them to present. But a lot of people would either like just blank out on a different set of questions, or they might not be so comfortable getting into that discussion. And that's where, like, where we thought that, okay, you will get all of these questions every day, right? So
Hmm.
I always like people who were saying that, okay, yeah, I tried it like this, but I see where what your point is, and we might be able to add one more dimension to it. So yeah,
Hmm.
they kind of like, okay, take in that feedback and then agree to it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, in my interview, I don't remember much of it. I kind of blacked out for the whole thing because I was so nervous. But in my interview, I had done something wrong in my project. I'm not sure what I think I had forgotten to synchronize the axes or something on a dual axis
Oh,
chart in
okay.
Tableau, something.
Yeah.
And somebody had asked me about it, and I had been like, "Oh, you're right. Actually, that's incorrect." And at the time, I couldn't remember the exact fix for the problem. I was
Hmm.
like, "But so I should I'll work on that, and then I can get back to you on that question." And there was a couple questions they had asked, and I had kind of taken based off the things they noticed, basically.
Mm.
And I had kind of taken it well and been like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, that was a mistake," or "I can work on that and get back to you." And so when I met my CEO in person last fall, she was like, "Yeah, I really loved that at your interview, you took the feedback and didn't just get
Yeah.
flustered or, oh no, that wasn't a mistake." And I had forgotten
Oh
about
yeah.
that moment because, like
Like
I said, I was
completely
blacked
defensive
out.
about it. Yeah.
But I was like, "Oh, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you."
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that goes a long way, because yeah, day to day there is so many things that goes on, right? So you need somebody who would be open to having that conversation with everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have 1 minute left. I
Mhm.
was curious if you have any like last things that you would like to impart on us or me specifically before we log off.
Yeah, I would say, like, I would definitely want to, like, especially mention the mental health perspective of it. I definitely ask people to, talk more about things happening around you, talk to people around you, and just take care, because it's a tough economy right now. And yeah, yeah, just take care. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on to this. I hope you enjoyed your first live event, and thanks to everybody
Yeah.
out there who tuned in to listen to us. I think this was great, and I think my favorite thing that you said was about I'm gonna have to remember the exact thing that you said, but like you understood where they were getting stuck. I think that was such a good
Right.
way to put
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
So,
thank you so
anyways,
much, Annie.
thanks
Yeah, thanks
everybody, and
everyone.
we'll see you at the next coffee chat. Good
Thank
night.
you.
And it'll